here I am with one of my beloved comfrey plants and all the bumblebees and the ants on here. And comfrey has become one of my premier first aid plants. So it grows right outside my back door, and I don't use it all the time, but when I need it, I need it. I've had sprained ankles just heal overnight after getting wrapped in a comfrey compress in a plastic bag. I'm a huge comfrey fan, and yeah, feed it to my animals and really enjoy being around it.
Why do you suppose you got ants on here?
They're getting the nectar, it looks like, and sometimes you'll even see bumblebees land and the ants will like fend them off. It's okay, ant.
They thought they were going to fend you off.
Right. Go on. Yep.
Huh. So I kind of wonder if, because usually where there's ants on a plant, there's aphids. But I don't see anything that looks like, so I don't see anything that looks like aphid damage.
No, I think they're just getting the nectar.
Comfrey is, I call it the queen of the multifunctional plants, in that it has so many uses. Again, the caveat there is it spreads by root division, so people who till, like people who are disking their pastures or rototilling their gardens, tend to fear it because it will spread very rapidly by root division, and then it's pretty hard to get rid of if it's covering a large area. I've successfully sheet mulched out individual large comfrey plants without any problem, so in small quantities you can get rid of it if you don't want it, but why would you not want it? Because it's a beneficial insect attractor, it's a great wound healing. I use comfrey all the time to help wounds heal without scars and without infections. It's a great dynamic nutrient accumulator. It's got an enormous root system. The good side of the enormous root system is that it punches deep into the soil and pulls up all kinds of good minerals and then concentrates those minerals in its abundant leaf system, and then you just do a chop and drop type of mulch with it. You just cut it down a few times a season and you can mulch with it right in place so that the minerals will be delivered right into wherever the comfrey is, like under a fruit tree is a very good place for it. Or you can carry the leaves over and put them in your compost pile, or you can make a comfrey tea with it. You can steep it in water for a couple of weeks and that'll extract the minerals out of it and ferment this really great brew, which you then can put on your soil, put on your plant to deliver those minerals to the plants. And it's a huge biomass accumulator. It generates a huge amount of green material that you can then put in your compost or use as a mulch as well. So comfrey is one of my utter favorite plants, and I always love to have some with me wherever I am.
This is comfrey. This is also we grow this mostly for a mulch plant, although because the root of it goes really deep, as does the burdock, and maybe the burdock does the same thing, but they can draw nutrients from deep, and then we take the leaves and put them around other plants, tear them up or whatever, and then they break down and make those nutrients available to the higher up on the soil.
We have comfrey planted here. Has tons of uses: nutrient accumulator, edible plant for humans, medicinal plant for humans. A lot of livestock will eat it. We had the impression that chickens loved comfrey because they would devour it whenever they got a chance in past years. We discovered, though, that was just because they didn't have any other greens available. Over this last few months, we implemented the rotating chicken paddock method that Paul has written so much about, and moved a lot of excess plants from the front yard into the paddocks to stock them, and the chickens ate all those first before they're bothering with the comfrey, so it's actually not their preferred food. But we planted a lot of it here, figuring that it would be chop and throw over the fence to the chickens and potentially feed rabbits and ducks in the long term.
And also there's two types of comfrey here. The first one that you were filming over there is more of a clumping, taller plant with these curly little clumps of purple flowers. And this stuff it gets this tall. This is the height, but it's more of a spreading ground cover, and it has different colored flowers. They're white mottled with purple and pink and stuff. So.
Comfrey's an old friend of mine. I love comfrey. And it's one of the plants that feeds the soil more than anything else. It's a real servant of the other things around it. Now, of course, Of course, it does really hold its own ground, but the way it feeds the environment is it creates a lot of rot and sloughing material from its roots. And so it's sloughing material into the soil all the time. It feeds the bacteria, and the worms come and eat the bacteria. So there's always lots of earthworms around comfrey. Lovely stuff. And so if you dig comfrey up, and sometimes I get comfrey plants that are rotting, and they're so full of worms that I use them for worm nurseries. I take pieces of it and I transplant it to places that need worms. So it's a great worm feeder. So it's feeding, and because it feeds those worms, they take the nutrients and spread it around the environment. So it's a really beneficial and selfless plant. Comfrey is also really good when you're trying to rebuild tissue, when you're trying to rebuild muscles, tendons, and bones. It's called knit bone for a reason. It helps knit bones together. If you rub comfrey salve over a deep stab wound, cell proliferation proceeds so fast that it can heal over before the wound is healed inside, and so you can get a suppurating wound. So it proliferates cell division and cell growth. So it's a great friend. I use comfrey leaves and as one of the very first things in the spring that I can eat for a salad green. It comes up really early. The young leaves and the flower heads are great in a salad. Dr. James Duke put the danger of comfrey into perspective, and he said that 1 bottle of beer is equivalent to 100 cups of comfrey tea in terms of dangerous alkaloids. So comfrey is not, it has some dangerous things in it, but it has, you know, it has very little danger properly used. In other words, you can use a lot of comfrey tea. Go ahead, try it.
What's going on here is this is largely comprised of a comfrey understory. We have a lot of some cow parsnip over there, but generally comfrey. So this is, we're kind of mimicking what you see in the books here with the dynamic accumulator comfrey dominating, and as you can see, it fully dominates. You have very little grass growth under it, only here in the path.
Pretty much there, although there is non-herbicide ways to deal with things that are in the wrong location. Like comfrey is one that I've dealt with a number of times when it's in the wrong spot and you want to get rid of it. You can't get rid of it by digging it out because comfrey's got a 12-foot taproot on it. But the way you get rid of it is build a hot compost pile right on top of it.
I was going to say pigs.
Pigs don't get, they will spread comfrey. If you want to plant a field of comfrey, stick your pigs on it. But if you want to get it out of that zone, comfrey's great in the right spots, but if it's not in the right spot, you want to get rid of it, build a hot compost pile on top of it. And in one short season, the duration it takes for that compost to digest, it'll kill off that comfrey crown. And I would imagine, I haven't tried it with rhubarb, but I would imagine it'd do the same thing with rhubarb.
I imagine another way to get rid of comfrey or rhubarb, or like if you got comfrey or rhubarb growing somewhere and you don't, you know, it's feeling a little out of place or whatever, I kind of wonder if maybe the thing to do is to plant a tree there.
Could be.
A fruit tree would do.
Take it over.
Well, a fruit tree would just do real well there, and comfrey and rhubarb both are things that are real good to plant next to a fruit tree.
Yeah, sometimes if you don't want to gild the comfrey with the tree, you gild the tree with the comfrey. This is a crazy tangled mess of luscious fruit and friends of fruit. So this is scarlet gumi, and this produces a gumi berry. I also have some other things in the guild. I've got some comfrey down in there that I'll use for mulch. Cut several times a year and laid down.
Because comfrey looks a lot like the foxglove, only the foxglove is kind of scalloped, like little bumps, like little scallops on the edge, and the comfrey is just really like a cut. It doesn't have any scallops at all. And then the borage has much more scallops than that. It has a lot more spines coming up on the leaf. And then the mullein, of course, is just like the softest thing in the world. You can just pet it and touch it. And it's fatter. The mullein is really, it's a beefy leaf. The leaf is, yeah. Whereas the foxglove is more flimsy.
If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at Permies.com, where we talk about how some weeds ain't weeds at all, homesteading, permaculture, all the time. If comfrey is queen, who's king?
Right. King would be bamboo, I would say, is the king of the multifunctional plants. Thousands of uses for bamboo.